What's up, YouTube? I'm here to do my predictions for UFC Fight Night Smith versus Spann. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Emily Whitmire versus Hannah Goldie. And to me, I think both these chicks are just kind of okay. They're both primarily grapplers. Um, with these kind of lower level chick fights, it's really hard to predict because usually one chick just ends up dominating the other one in the grappling. And it's just kind of a coin flip. I'm leaning towards Hannah Goldie, but it's super close. But I'm going to pick Goldie to win by decision. Next is Gustavo Lopez versus Haley Anatong Haley. To me, I think these guys are pretty similar. They both like to primarily strike, and they mix in some grappling here and there. I think Gustavo Lopez is just a little bit better everywhere, but they are very similar, so I could see this fight being super close. I just think that, like I said, I think Gustavo's just a little bit better at everything, and they both fight very similarly. But yeah, I'm going to pick Gustavo to win by like a 29-28 decision. Next is Impa Kasanganay versus Carlton Harris. And my biggest thing with Impa Kasanganay was, in his last fight, he looked like he was starting to get a little bit tired. And I wonder if this weight cut is a little too much for him. And that's my biggest fear. Is even though he won, it was mainly because of that takedown that he got and got the rear naked choke. But I thought that even though he was winning that fight, he was starting to get really tired before the finish. And I think Carlton Harris is a much better overall grappler than the last guy Kasanganay fought. I think that his wrestling and overall grappling is a lot better. They're both primarily strikers with good overall grappling, but I'm leaning towards Carlton Harris. I just think he's the more well-rounded fighter, and I think that this is his natural weight class, and I think the longer this goes, the more it's going to favor him. So I'm going to pick Carlton Harris to win by, like, third-round finish. Next is Erin Blanchfield versus Sarah, I can't say her last name. To me, I think Erin is just a really solid striker with overall solid takedown defense, as where Sarah is just kind of decent. She's not amazing anywhere, and she's not bad anywhere, but she's just okay. But yeah, I'm going to lean towards Erin. I think she just kind of out-kickboxes her for 3 rounds and wins a 30-27 decision. Next is Montel Jackson versus JP Buys, and this fight's at bantamweight. JP was fighting at flyweight before, and I think he's way too small. I think Montel Jackson's a huge guy, and when you look at the fights that Montel's lost, it's these wrestlers that can continuously take him down and try to hold him down, because he's really hard to take down and he's really hard to hold down. And every fight he's lost, it was like this non-stop battle for guys to just try to keep him down. And JP has the wrestling to do that, but I think that the size difference is going to be the biggest thing. Is the other guys that did that, yeah, they were smaller than Montel, but they were natural 135ers. I don't think JP is a natural 135er, and I honestly don't think his wrestling is as strong as the two guys that beat Montel. I think he's a good wrestler, but not as good as the two guys that have beaten Montel. I think he might be able to do that for a round, maybe a round and a half before he starts getting really tired, and then I think Montel kind of turns it on him and starts beating him up on the ground and probably gets a win by knockout or TKO in like the second or third round. So I pick Montel Jackson by second or third round TKO. Next is Zug Wrong versus Brendan Jenkins, and this is the thing. They're both primarily strikers. They like to counter brawl. I was not impressed with Zung's debut. He looked super flat-footed. He looked like he couldn't pull the trigger. And in this fight, he missed weight by 2 pounds. And Brendan Jenkins is the one taking this fight on short notice. He's taking this fight on like 1 or 2 weeks' notice. I'm leaning towards Jenkins. I was leaning towards Zung in the beginning of the week because I thought if he could make weight and if he looked decent, maybe he'll look better in the second fight. But just the combination of his first fight, he didn't look good, and now him missing weight. I'm leaning towards Brendan Jenkins. I think that this will be kind of a brawl back and forth, but I think Brendan Jenkins has the better conditioning, and I think the weight miss is going to show that, and I think as this fight goes on, he's going to take over, and I think Brendan Jenkins is going to win either close decision or get a late TKO finish. Next is Pineda Kinzard versus Raquel Pennington, and my biggest thing is just Raquel hasn't been fighting that frequently, and she's getting older. I think Pineda Kinzard has been looking better and better every fight. I don't think she won her last fight. I think, what's-her-face, the Canadian chick, gets screwed on these decisions all the time. Every fight where she's like outlanding the person she's fighting, and then somehow she always loses the decision. It's insane to me. But I do think these two chicks are very similar. I just think Pineda Kinzard throws much higher volume with her strikes, and she's the more precise striker. The area where Raquel would probably have the advantage is the grappling, but she hasn't been using her wrestling offense as much. It's really just to pin people against the cage, but she isn't using takedowns as much, and I think it's because of all those surgeries she had on her legs. I just don't think she can do it as well as she used to, and I think that's why she hasn't been as consistent. And because of that, I think Pineda, just her higher volume is just going to edge out all the rounds. And I think this will be a back and forth fight. But I just think Pineda is going to edge out all 3 rounds with just her higher volume wherever the fight is. And she's going to win a 30-27 decision. Next is Mike Rodriguez versus Tonfa. Tonfui, I think is how they say it. Yeah, I think Tonfa is just the better striker and the stronger wrestler at this point. Mike is the longer fighter, and if he can fight on the outside, he probably could win this fight, but Mike tends to slow down, so I don't think he can kind of keep that distance for 3 rounds. He might win the first round, but I think it's one of those things where Tonfa doesn't really get tired despite his size, which is really crazy because he's super shredded, and you think a guy like that would get tired quick, but he can kind of keep the same pace for 3 rounds, and I feel like all he has to do is continuously move forward on Mike Rodriguez, and Mike will start to get tired, and I think come the second round, once Tonfa starts landing his bigger shots, I think he's going to win by knockout. I think that round 2, sometime in the middle, maybe the late end, Tonfa's going to start to catch Mike as he starts to slow down. I think he wins by knockout or TKO. Next is Joaquin Buckley versus Antonio Arroyo, and these guys are both really good strikers. I think this fight's a lot closer than people think because I think Joaquin Buckley is a big favorite, and even though I'm picking Joaquin Buckley, I'm just being honest. Like, this is just like when he fought Alessio Di Chirico. I thought in that fight, too, that, you know, even though I picked Buckley, I said Di Chirico is a decent striker, and he can catch Buckley. And I feel like that's the exact same fight in this fight. It's Joaquin Buckley's probably the better striker and overall fighter. But Antonio Arroyo is still a really good striker in his own right, and he can absolutely catch anybody. Like, he's a very good striker. I do think that, like I said, Joaquin Buckley is just the faster, more athletic guy, and I think he can just kind of outpoint Arroyo a little bit, but I won't be shocked if Arroyo can catch him, but I'm going to pick Buckley just because I do think overall, outside of one of these guys catching each other, Buckley just wins the decision in this fight all the time. So I'm going to pick Buckley to win a solid 30-27 decision. Next is Nate Maness versus Tony Gravely, and it's very weird because in Nate's last fight, I felt like he was losing pretty badly until what's-his-face was getting tired. I feel like Tony Gravely isn't going to get tired like that. I think he can keep the same wrestling pace for 3 rounds, and I do think Tony's the much better overall wrestler-grappler. And I think he just needs to keep the type of pace he normally keeps. As long as he continuously attacks with takedowns and like submission attempts on the ground, I think Tony Gravely's going to win all 3 rounds by a solid 30-27 decision. I think Nate's probably the better striker, but not by much. And it's not like he's a huge one-punch knockout guy either. I just think Tony's better grappling is going to edge him out all the rounds. And that's kind of how I feel about this next fight, too. I think Arman Tsarukyan versus Cristianos Gallegos is like the last fight, but even more lopsided. For the most part, these guys are both wrestler submission guys. They both have striking and they can strike. But even in that area, I would say Arman's probably a little bit better than Cristianos. I feel like Cristianos is more like kind of a technical brawler, as where Arman is more just like a decent striker. I think that the striking's close. I would slightly favor Arman, but in the grappling, I just hugely favor Arman. I think that Cristianos tends to get really tired as the fight goes on, and I think after the first round, we're going to see Arman really start to take over. Like, the first round might be a little back and forth, but I have a strong feeling that come round 2, round 3, Arman's going to really start to take over and probably win by submission. I just think his conditioning and overall grappling is way better than Cristianos's. And like I said, outside of the first round, I think that Cristianos has no chance. Like, he could possibly catch Arman in the first with, like, a strike or, like, a huge submission attempt. But I just don't see it. I think that's such a low chance. I think that, like I said, the longer this fight goes, which I think it will, it hugely favors Arman. And I think Arman's going to win by, like, 3rd round rear naked choke. Next, we got Ariana Lipski versus Mandy Bowman. And these 2 chicks are both just decent. I don't know why the Pineda-Kinzard fight isn't on the main card instead of this one. I think it's going to be a really close back-and-forth fight with some striking, some grappling. I'm going to lean towards Lipski. I just think she's a little bit better. Next is Ion Cutelaba versus Devin Clark. This fight's pretty simple. I think it's Ion early or Devin Clark late. I think this is going to be a lot like Devin Clark's fight against Alonzo Metafield. I think he has to survive that strong first round from Ion. But if he can drag this past the first, I think he can win the second and third round with just strong wrestling. You know, Ion Cutelaba is a good wrestler in his own right, and I feel like he is the better striker. This fight's so tough, but I will lean ever so slightly towards Ion. I've been going back and forth on this all week. Like, even right now, I feel like I might pick Devin. It's because I just feel like even when Ion gets tired, his takedown defense is pretty good. I guess I'm going to go with Devin Clark. I just think that my biggest fear is just that first round. I think that if Ion can't get that finish in that first round, he's going to get tired, and I think Devin can just pin him against the fence for 2 rounds. Like I said, I'm still going back and forth on this fight even right now. I really feel like this fight is straight down the middle, 50-50 fight. But I'm going to lean towards Devin. I know I said Ion, but I'm going to pick Devin. I think he wins a 29-28 decision. I just think he survives that first and then just kind of wears on Ion for the next 2 rounds. Next final fight is the main event, Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. I think this fight's pretty simple. I think that the person who's more conservative with their gas tank is going to win. I think both these guys have the same problem of starting really strong, really early. And I think that they both tend to slow down a little bit as the fight goes on. Ryan Spann's the best example was that fight with Sam Alvey, where he was winning and then Sam Alvey started to come on strong in the third and almost knocked him out at the end. And it's because he uses a ton of wrestling, jiu-jitsu grappling early, and he throws a lot of big strikes, but then he tends to slow down as the fight goes on because it's a lot of big actions early. Smith is kind of the same. He's a high-volume fighter, and he just throws high volume from the second the fight starts until the fight ends. And the fights where he's kind of won and come back were when guys started really fast on him, and that's why I'm leaning towards Smith in this fight, because Spann's going to use a lot of wrestling and offensive, like, jiu-jitsu submission attempt stuff. And I think Smith is going to survive that. And I think the first 2 rounds, Spann's going to win pretty decidedly, 10-9s. But I think after that, Smith's going to be less tired because he wasn't using as much energy. And I think other than Spann finishing him on the ground, which I don't think he will because Smith's really good at surviving on the ground, I think come round 3, Smith's going to be less tired. Spann's going to have a hard time finding the takedowns. And Smith's just going to outland him on the feet. I think Spann's the better grappler in terms of his wrestling. I think jiu-jitsu is pretty even. But I think Smith's the better striker. Spann's got the more one-punch knockout power, but I think Smith's the better overall striker. I think he throws better volume, and he's just more clean with his striking. But this is a really close fight because I do think Spann could finish Smith in the first 2 rounds just with strong ground and pound or submission attempts. But I'm leaning towards Smith to survive those first 2 rounds, start to pick it up in the third, and probably get a 4th round finish. So that's my prediction. 4th round finish for Smith. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.